So today we are joined by Benji and Devesh of Grow and Convert. If you're not familiar with Grow and Convert, they are a fully done-for-you content marketing service focused on driving actual leads and revenue. They have worked with tons of high-growth companies like Patreon, Pilot, Leadfeeder, and more. And their blog is chock full of actionable tips and strategies. Definitely highly recommend giving it a read if you haven't already. So before we dive in, some housekeeping. Benji and Devesh are going to review 4 B2B SEO content types, and we'll start with a blog post and then do an alternative landing page or product landing page, and finally a miscellaneous kind of help desk piece of content. And we'll do our best to keep it around 15 minutes per content type. So Benji and Devesh, I'll let you take it from here. And I'll go ahead and drop in the first URL in chat. And everyone else, please ask questions in the chat and Q&A. Bernard and I will do our best to raise those questions to Benji and Devesh throughout the webinar.
All right.
Here's the first one. If you see that or not.
Yep, SEO competitor analysis.
Okay. Can I share my screen? Should I?
Yes.
Data box, how to do an SEO competitive analysis. I'm assuming this is the keyword.
Yeah, should we look at it in the SERP?
Are they on here? Is that embarrassing? Oh, here we go. So they're on the bottom, number 8 or 9 of SEO competitive analysis. The first thing I would do to analyze any blog post like this for a B2B company is I actually want to first see what they do and and then assess how relevant this keyword is for them, and then that'll help inform what needs to go into the post. So data box, build dashboards and track performance from everywhere. First blush, Benji, I don't know, are you familiar with data box?
I mean, I've heard of them. I'm not super familiar with them.
I feel like I've only actually seen them on the SERP for like client keywords. We're also trying to go after.
Yeah, I mean, just because they build dashboards, I lean towards this not being a super great keyword for them, because
but at least it's somewhat relevant. I mean,
sure, it has to do with reporting. But yeah. The reason I say not a super good one as opposed to a good one, because SEO competitive analysis to me would be like if you're looking at a competitor in Ahrefs or any other SEO tool and you're trying to figure out what keywords someone else ranks for. I don't know that necessarily that their product does that if they're pulling data from their own analytics and trying to create dashboards. So that would just be my reasoning there.
Yeah, I mean, when I'm looking through this, it's I was thinking, okay, maybe it's a dashboard and then some component is like SEO dashboards. I guess it would be product dashboard integrations. This is a straight up dashboarding tool.
Yeah, that's why I said I don't go to solutions really quickly. There's an SEO dashboard software. But again, I think this is more about your own analytics being pulled into a dashboard rather than it is doing competitive analysis on another.
Yeah, I mean,
company.
this is, so just full disclosure of this, I am quite familiar with this because one of our clients for a long time has been TapClicks, which is like an enterprise dashboarding tool. So this is like and it so happens that I'm covering and acting as strategist for that for like a long time. So the kind of thing, so that's the first thing, is this is what we would call mid-funnel keywords, right? Because like the fact that someone's Googling SEO competitive analysis, like just look at the SERP, Guide to SEO Competitor Analysis free template from Moz, right? So they're saying like, this is how to do it, how to do SEO competitive analysis from SEMrush, SEO competitive analysis definitive guide, Ahrefs, like it just like on and on. It's like, these are guides of how to do it. So then from a utility, like business effect of your SEO efforts, of your content marketing efforts, the story you're asking to happen, if your data box is somebody Googles this, why? Clearly from the SERP, because they want to know how to do SEO competitive analysis. And then sometime after that, they think, well, I'm doing all this SEO work. I've got data in different places. It'd be really convenient to come in here. Actually, maybe the real story would be some fraction of people Googling this, or a heavy fraction, are at agencies, and agencies are notoriously like the people that need software like this because they have a ton of clients, they have a million GA accounts and a million Ahrefs like things, and or SEMrush or whatever, and they need to bring it in to one place to monitor their SEO work. And you're just like, okay, maybe some fraction of people Googling this happen to need a solution like Databox. That is a lot of ifs to make that connect, right? So like this is mid-funnel in my mind, maybe even top of the funnel. We don't really have like hard and fast distinctions between them. That said, we can break down how it is for this particular SERP. I don't know if we want to pause for questions or anything, Bernard, Travis. Otherwise, we can look at it.
And no questions right now, so we can keep moving.
Yeah, the way we would actually then assess this is we start with this SERP analysis, which if you guys are on a Clearscope webinar and you've ever heard Bernard talk about anything SEO, this should be quite familiar. Because Bernard, you also beat this drum pretty heavily. Like the overall idea is to decide what the search intent is here, look at what Google's already ranking. It does not mean, and you have to produce a clone to that. But what it means is that's going to give you some clues. In fact, a lot of clues as to what it wants, what the searcher wants, because the algorithm is smart. It has all this data, and it's like, you know, testing different SERP arrangements, and it's settled on this, at least for now. So
yeah, like a couple of things that stand out to me. Well, one, you already touched it, just the how to do seems to be the angle that you would want to take. But what's really interesting to me is when you look at the people also ask, that it's looking for a step-by-step process. And so it seems that someone has already written a process that outlines 6 steps or 5 steps, and that people are actively searching for what those steps are. So
and it's even
probably
here, like it's in this, I don't know, you guys may know what this is actually called, but this like these like sublinks inside a result. Identify your something, evaluate keywords, look for new keywords, identify, analyze, study, right? See competitor, like every single one, it feels like has this, or almost every single one, including theirs. So
and
in
to
that
me, it
respect,
looks like everyone's just copying one and just slightly changing it into their own language.
Yeah, and we have a thing. So you know, we have this thing published like a bajillion years ago, and it wasn't really meant. This is not really. Oh, that's funny. Who's Market Blazer? That's also writing about originality nuggets. This wasn't really meant to be an SEO thing. This was written a while back, but the idea is first you look at the SERP and see what are they doing, and then like Benji said, you then say, well, like, is this useful? Because I bet you if we look at these, I mean, just looking at this, like, you know, I respect Ahrefs a lot, so I don't want to be like saying like trashing Ahrefs, but do you, like someone who's Googling and doing SEO competitive analysis, do you really need to tell them that the first step is to like identify your competitors, right? Like anyone doing this kind of like, right, from everyone we've talked to in SEO, not only have they identified their competitors, they're extremely scared of their competitors. There's like, I don't know, their DA is really big. They have a ton of links. We can't possibly compete. That's what we usually talk them out of. And so that would probably be step 2. It's like, okay, I've figured this out. It's how to. There's a step-by-step kind of component that people are wanting to know. We can do that. Then the next step would be, now, what are they kind of doing that's like, just like obvious, eye-rolly, and how can we do better on that? And on that respect, if we look at this, let's see, what is it? You know, this is, you could, from what I just said, you could say this is too basic, but at the same time, for a lot of these how-to posts, you see that Google loves this stuff. And so like, fine, you can mention it and discuss it. When should you, still intro, types of, how to do in 5 steps. Let's just look at this. What is the 5 steps? Oh, wow. It doesn't actually anchor link to anything. Anyway, and Travis and Bernard, if we need more time for other things, and this is enough here, it's fine. How to do it. Identify competitors. Surprise, Benji, they are all copying each other. Conduct page analysis. Isn't this literally what they're asking to do, I guess? Focus on keywords with high ROI. Yeah, we did talk about this. Create an executor. Yeah, like this is just, it feels very, you know, like surface level.
It feels like someone just looked at the first post and then reworded it in their own language instead of having anything original to say. Maybe we should contrast this with what we would do instead. Like if I think this keyword is better suited for a company like Ahrefs or SEMrush or one of the ones that are competing in the top, because then what you could do with this keyword is talk about how to run through competitive analysis with your own tool. Yeah. And then you can make it super actionable and say, and give an example of, if we were doing, let's say we were this company and we were doing competitive analysis against this company, here's how we would think about solving this problem. So put the company into the tool, here's what we would look for. And then it becomes unique and does have that originality nugget component instead of just kind of rehashing everything else that's in the search results. And that's one thing that we find most companies do, is they're looking at those top 5 posts. They see that they're all kind of similar. And so they think that they need to create something similar in order to rank, instead of doing something a little outside the box or a little bit more original.
Yeah, and that's exactly what Moz is doing here, which is great. Yeah, that's a great point. So just like we said at the beginning, like, is this really tied to Databox's business? That's a great point, that it is actually really tied to Moz's business and SEMrush's business and Ahrefs's business, because that's literally what these tools do, is you can put in a bunch of competitors, and so they can definitely tie in like screenshots. Like, this is literally how to look at what keywords your competitors are looking for. Look, like, this is great. And then if you go through and read this, of course, some fraction of people, it's like begging you to like use Moz to do it. And I would imagine that Ahrefs is like kind of the same thing. There you go. Identify competitors, and now they have screenshots of their own tool doing it, and it makes you want to use their tool. So for these tools, actually, yeah, for these companies, this is a decently bottom of funnel, or at least a keyword that has some level of product intent, and the product can be tied in pretty well.
Yeah, but I think that's part of the reason why Databox is having trouble creating that uniqueness inside of their blog post, is just it doesn't necessarily tie to the product.
Yeah, what are they going to add to this conversation?
Yeah.
Yeah. Actually, you know what? So, what they could do, if you wanted to, like if we were doing this and we wanted to get conversions from it, now that you mention it, is, I mean, this is a stretch, but you could then talk about, and maybe they do this, maybe we're being unfair and they do this, and I haven't scrolled through everything. I'm like literally pulled this up, Travis, when you sent this. So none of this I've checked before. Okay, so a little bit of product tie-in, but I was going to say, you could say, look, if you're doing this at the agency level, or if you're a company that owns multiple brands and you're trying to do this, you could create, it's really useful for you to create a dashboard that pulls in this information, that's monitoring movement and keywords from your competitors. There are people who are really interested in that kind of thing, right? Like a lot of these like B2C companies, stuff moves fast in terms of search volume and trends or whatever. And you can use, you're going to need a dashboard of some kind. Otherwise, look how inconvenient it is if you're just pulling up multiple things. And so therefore, Databox can do X, Y, Z. And that would be kind of interesting. And that would, I think, preferentially attract just the people that would be appropriate for Databox. Because people that only want to do SEO competitive analysis for one company a couple times, Databox is not for them. No matter what you write in this post, you're not converting them because it's not appropriate. The solution is not appropriate for them. But if you are this like enterprise level marketing agency and you're like, man, I got to do this across 100 clients, and Databox is like, yeah, that is a pain, isn't it? Here's how you could sort of create some automated version of that. That would be very interesting. Cool. Next.
Okay, great points. We do have one suggestion from Ryan in the audience. I'll go ahead and drop it in. His keyword is workplace mentoring programs.
To it. Workplace mentoring programs. First, let's do what we did before. Benji, this is
my past space.
Your past life.
Well, it's internal mentoring platform. Okay. This is like literally the company. I used to work for a company that did this exact same thing.
So what is the actual product or service?
Is it? I'm guessing it's mentor matching. Yeah, pairing, scheduling. Yeah, this is literally it. I worked for a company that did this exact same thing. So my guess is that there's a candidate or an employee inside the company. they take some sort of skills assessment, identify areas that they want to improve, and then they get matched with a mentor at some top company, and the platform helps with the matching, pairing, and then the management of the mentor-mentee relationship.
So
Is that
in that
correct?
respect, workplace mentoring programs, I believe, is the keyword. That seems way more aligned than the data box example we just went through. Because it sounds like this keyword is literally what Together is offering. Is that right? Is that what you're saying?
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah.
Workplace mentoring.
So is it ranking?
Yeah, that's a great bottom of the funnel keyword.
Yeah. Travis, do you want us to then dissect the piece, or is that pretty?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So what we would do then to go through the same, we'd look in here, workplace mentoring programs. What are people looking for? So this looks like how to create one.
5 types of them.
Yeah, background info, right? Like kind of guide stuff. So this is what is interesting about this.
Really mixed intent.
Is like you're almost kind of, this feels very bottom of the funnel. Like if you're Googling this, you're like, this is literally what we offer, is a way to create this. And yet a lot of these are kind of how-tos. I think we would often, even in our title, and this is actually probably pretty aligned with what we would do, we would often say, like, you know, we would try to get best of both worlds and say, this is how, or like how to build one, and then often allude to the fact that we have a solution, an easy way to create. Because I think a lot of times here, there just may not be that many companies that have products for creating workplace mentoring programs. They're not Googling men's running shoes, right? Where it's like obvious to Google that they're searching for a product. And so Google's providing what they think is best, but some fraction of these people probably would love just some help, just like getting it off the ground, or what Together does. And so therefore, if you kind of alluded to that, those people will be kind of attracted and be like, great, sounds good. That said, majority of results are going to be when you're in the top 3 spots. So their number one goal is to get into the top 3 spots. Then if we look at this, let's see, that our general stands for this pattern. And you can read more in this kind of SEO content writing post that we have. But like, so we talked about topic, we talked about SERP analysis. In this kind of structure part, we're not going to go through writing on a webinar, but in the structure part, I think what we often do for these bottom of the funnel keywords is mention the pain point that the product solves first. Like, workplace mentoring programs are beneficial because of XYZ, but it's hard to do like this. And this is kind of doing that, but how to do it well. Wow. Who wrote this? You guys been reading Grow and Convert? For your company, run workplace mentoring, they need this, they need this, they need this. Now, I can't speak to how quality this is because I don't really know about this space. But, and then let's see, what do they have? Yeah, this is very aligned with how we would be. Is this Ryan? I have been reading Grow and Convert. Yeah, it's clear, Ryan. Great. Thanks for the inline advertisement. Yeah, like you're saying, you know, this is, we often call this internally, we call this factors to consider. We do that in software programs all the time. Like if you're looking for a small business accounting system, these are the things you should consider. And of course, they're useful and they're good, but they also are factors that the client's product fulfills. I would probably be a little bit more specific. Like this is kind of cliche in every B2B blog post teaching anything. It'll be like clear goals. Like I feel like the data box post could have said this about SEO competitive analysis. First, have goals on your competitive analysis, right? But yeah, and then I would probably, we wouldn't do this for a bottom of the funnel keyword like this instead of 12 best practices. Because at this point, you're just scrolling through stuff and it's like sell leaders on being mentors. It's gonna, Ryan, I'm with all due respect, some of this is going to start borderlining on cliches, right? Encourage mentees to drive the relationship. Like, what does that mean? I would go into the product. I'd say,
I'm curious if that process, if you actually pull up the #1 search result, it's Indeed. And I'm curious if that was a decision because of what's already ranking higher. So like, this is so basic. I'm actually surprised this ranks #1.
I mean, it ranks #1 probably because it's,
yeah, but like it's a horrible post. Define the program's goal. Like, okay, that's really obvious.
yeah.
I'm curious if
what we would do, so that everyone knows, what we would do instead is probably in this section at this point, say how you have built this product, service, or what have you to fulfill these criteria. This is a little bit, as I was saying, a little bit general, but to fulfill this. So you say, look, like most workplace mentoring programs, they have a few issues. And I would probably do almost the inverse of that, because I think the pain point or the challenge is more interesting to the reader. You're like, oh yeah, that's true. Or like, we've tried it. That is going to be hard. You say like most of them, you know, they have good intentions, but they get this wrong and they mess this up and they mess that up. And so we built a program or a platform or whatever, a service to fix that. And here's how. And then this would be like, you know, how Together was built to fix these problems. And if you get someone to read that intro and be like bought in enough to keep reading, they're going to read that. And I think for everyone listening, that one big thing we come across when working with like internal content teams at our client organizations is this status quo belief that everyone kind of has in the content space that you shouldn't be too salesy. That SEO content marketing is just like, there's this idea like some Gary Vaynerchuk, like give ass thing. Like you have to give the value. Well, no, why would we second or third H2 in? We're going to sell our product. Like people are going to throw eggs at us. You're like, no one's throwing eggs at you. They Googled workplace mentoring programs and you're telling them how you can help them build workplace mentoring programs. That's exactly what they want. And so,
yeah, and also go back to the SERP really quickly and go to the bottom of the related question. Yeah, like all this stuff also ties in as well. So you could, well, yeah, like how to structure it. You could literally talk about the structure, how you actually structure it at your business. You could talk about this a sample program. You could create a template that outlines your own process, and then it really becomes unique to your organization, and all content also ties to the product as well.
Yeah, I mean, this is all indicating to me there is some level of like, I want to do this. And so you would say like, this is how we help you do this. This is how we solve those problems. And Ryan asked, I can see in the chat, would it make sense to include screenshots of the problem? Yes. Because again, like Benji's saying, the problem with B2B search results, I'm making a very general statement, but that's fine, I can defend it, is that the vast majority of them for these how-to related keywords are just basic levels of information that anyone like who is actually a B2B potential customer for any of these products that is like doing this as their job. It's like just like every single thing on every topic is like, first, set your goals. You're like, I'm Googling this because I had a goal, dude. Like, what are you talking about? And so like, you know, and so if you can provide screenshots and be like, there's this little specific problem. Look at this. You're going to run into this. We literally built software to solve this problem. Here's how it works. That is a breath of fresh air. Even if they're not going to use your thing, no one's going to feel like they're being heavily sold to. They Googled something that indicates that that's a pain point. They're going to be like, great, this sounds amazing. You know, or maybe I'll find it in another software, but at least it taught me something.
Don had some, I could pushback. So devil's advocate, what can seem obvious to a subject matter expert is not always obvious to the searcher. But I agree, I'd integrate a focus on the product or solution itself. I would argue that it really just depends on the keyword. Again, if someone's searching for a workplace mentoring program, they do have pretty substantial knowledge probably about workplace mentoring programs, enough to know that that's what they're searching for. And so in this case, because it's more bottom of the funnel, I think the searcher likely has more awareness of just some of the mentoring programs that are out there, some of the options already. They're not coming into it completely blind. So yeah, that's just what I'd say on that point. And Nicholas said,
well, before that one, the other thing I'd say is like there is a spectrum of search intent also, right? It's not like what Benji's saying is right. A lot of the target customer of it Together is going to be Googling this and is like someone who's building the program. They probably work in some kind of HR related field and they're
L&D,
like, you know, but yeah, maybe some other people, their boss told them, hey, we need like a mentoring program because we're growing, and they're just Googling it to just kind of get their bearings. Yes, there's going to be some spectrum in search intent. Sometimes you can like have parts of the blog post fulfill it. Other times you just have to say, you know what, like we're not really going to be like appealing to those people, and that's okay. And you got to kind of make that sacrifice. Go ahead, Benji.
Nicholas also has an interesting question. So just curious on how often you should have a CTA in the article. Does it depend on the size of the blog?
Yeah, so we have a pattern on CTAs, and it's this. Isn't this is Ryan? Yeah, okay. Clearly Ryan's been reading Grow and Convert. So at the end of the intro, we put an italicized CTA. And I'll explain why in a second. Then we do something similar at the bottom of the blog post. And most people do that. And it's usually this. What I'm talking about, by the way, is not this. There's often in the blog template, there's some kind of like graphically designed. In this case, it's a form. It's typically just like a graphic that says like, download this thing or whatever. We're talking about like a CTA like this that says you can, we've talked about the blog post inside or the thing. The software, if you want to try it, click this to book a demo, try free, whatever the CTA is. And that's like the basics. We'll do it in those two places. Why here? Because many years ago, I did some A/B testing for various bloggers and found that when we only had CTAs at the bottom, I think there was like, we got a third of the conversions. In that case, that was for like joining an email list or downloading something. A third of also versus when we also put it at the end of the intro here. And what we concluded there is people who can't even make, like most of us don't have time to make it to the bottom of the blog post, even if we genuinely are interested in this thing and actually maybe need this software. We're not going to be like reading every word, right? Like a Harry Potter book. And so you got to just put it there to like be like, okay, cool. Like, let me go check this out. And then sometimes in the middle, we may talk about it a little bit, but otherwise, like if you're doing bottom of the funnel product related blog posts and talking about the product in it, that's enough, because almost every blog template is going to have like the logo here. And if they're interested and they're seeing screenshots, most people are going to want to like browse the product, browse the homepage and see stuff before they sign up anyways. Cool. Travis.
Very good points. So we can keep moving and move to the alternative verse pages. So I'll drop in an example of Salesforce verse HubSpot to kind of kick us off.
Oh, from HubSpot. So first things first, we love these keywords as a family of keywords. Not we love them as a Grow and Convert family, although probably that's true too. Because the buying intent is just ridiculously high. Like if we think about what we talked about with DataBox, it's like up in the funnel. Okay, maybe someone looking for SEO competitive analysis maybe needs a dashboard. And then we move to this together example, like, okay, so they're Googling, what is this, workplace mentorship programs. Maybe some people just want to learn it, but a decent fraction may actually want to implement it and want software. So it's a lot closer to the bottom of the funnel. This is at the tip now. Because
well, even for that last example, the Cronus versus Torch or something like that, I know that those are big names in that industry. Like that would definitely be, and you see there, yeah. I mean, I've heard of those besides them advertised there, but you can see that they're advertising against these keywords. Probably a great keyword to go after. I just got off a client call where we had a couple of these posts that were actually the highest converting out of everything that we produced so far. So.
Yeah, but the reason these are like the absolute like bottom is at this point, they don't need to be like sold that the product space is a good idea, right? They don't need to be sold that you should use software to help your employee think. They don't, or use a dashboard tool to like help your marketing reporting or whatever. And not only that, they then don't need to be told, in particular in this case, that Travis sent,
the players in the space are.
Yeah, it's like we're talking about our own comparison. They don't need to be told then that we are a player in the space or whatever. They're past all of that. They're at the last stage. And so ranking for this is really important. Before we get into the post, I will say one last thing is what we have often done, because a lot of our clients, I mean, just 80-20 rule, the majority of companies don't have the biggest mind share. Like this is kind of a artificial scenario, right? Because the majority of people are not going to be working at someone. I mean, Salesforce doesn't even need to do any of this because they're in every comparison blog post on CRM space, period. right? Because like they're the CRM. And then HubSpot, credit to them, have become kind of at close to that level, at least in like maybe a small business audience, right? But what we often do is our client will be maybe newer into the space. We'll take 2 comparisons of more famous companies and add in our client. So if our client was a more niche CRM, for example, we may say this has a bunch of
let's just say we were Pipedrive. It would be then it'd be Salesforce versus HubSpot versus Pipedrive, and you'd put your brand as the last name in there. And really what you can let dictate that is if you use Google suggested search and you started typing in your competitors' brand names, who are the names that pop up first? And I would use those names as the title post.
Yeah. Oh, look, Benji, Pipedrive actually is here. But look at the difference. Like, this is what I'm saying. Like, this is Salesforce HubSpot 1900. Yep. But even if you're some random, like whatever, like down here, right? Like
MuleSoft.
You know, much love to MuleSoft at 50 searches in the comparison, you know, but like it'll be like nothing. So what we'll do is say, oh, this is interesting. So let's do Salesforce versus HubSpot versus MuleSoft. And we call that, or I call that, just like crashing the party. You're just like, hey guys, I brought beer. And what that lets you do is you that can rank for all of the 6 permutations, right? Because there's 3 of them or something like that. And so you then can compare these 2. You can compare each one versus yourself or whatever. But this also works if you're one of these.
So some good questions before we dive into. So at this stage in comparison, wouldn't most prospects be talking to both companies' sales teams? I would actually say no. This is likely pre-talking to sales teams. So this is likely a customer that already has been convinced that they want a product in this category. They know the players in the space, and now they're trying to decide which of the features make sense or which of the products make sense for their business prior to talking to the sales team. And the reason there is because once you hit that talk to sales button, you typically know you're going to be hounded by salespeople, and so a lot of people will do all the pre-research and kind of come to a decision prior to talking to sales. And so, yeah, this piece is really meant to convince them that this product is the one that they should talk to sales with.
Yeah.
And then, is this therefore only relevant when introducing a new product, or for SMB SaaS where maybe you aren't talking to sales? We actually use this a lot when there's actually no talk to sales. It could be a free trial or some free plan. It still helps convince you to take action. And so again, just think about the mindset of a customer. If you're searching for this, you want to be convinced that one of these products is better for your specific use case. And that's the goal of this piece, is to do that convincing for you and almost be that salesperson, but in a written format.
Yeah, the alternative is another simple thing I'll say to that is, regardless of when they're Googling it, our take is, if people are Googling it, in this case, an absurd number of people, by the way, the vast majority of competitor keywords for yourself that you're going to look up is not going to be 1900. It's not going to be 590. It's not even going to be 50. It's going to be like 0 to 10. And you know, but those have still converted well for us because there are, right? Like, people don't index the web and know all research volume perfectly. My thing would be, why wouldn't you want to be part of this conversation? Why wouldn't you want to, you know, like, in terms of like, why would you want to get ahead of the media or whatever, like SEO analogy? Because if HubSpot's not here, so Salesforce is so big, they don't get 2 Fs that they're on here. They're just like, I don't care, we're Salesforce. Are you kidding? So they don't care. But HubSpot is here. What if they're not here? Then you're relying on whatever the heck Zapier decided to say about you, or technologyadvice.com, what in the world, or US News, right? So you're not controlling that. And what do these third parties typically do I have looked at a million SERPs like this for client work. They just give the most like neutral, they always will make them seem equal, because these third parties don't want to take a risk. They don't want to pick sides. So it'll be like, this one has that and that one has this, up to you. You know, like they're all the same. It's always like that. And so you're like, it's not up to you. Ours is better. Here's why, is you want to control that conversation. So why wouldn't you want to be in there? That said, I mean, this, like, I don't know if I have a lot to say on this. Like, this is fine. We probably do some version of this, but in a blog post, and they've just formatted it more like a landing page. I will say, as opposed to breaking this down, well, actually, let's break this down. If I go back to what I just said, the key thing we're trying to do is make it abundantly clear where and how our product, in our case, our client's product, is better. And let's see if HubSpot shockingly takes a neutral stance.
Yeah. Well, and another thing we would do.
Two public companies, they're worried about legal stuff.
for sure. Yeah, I guess if it wasn't like these bigger companies worried about the legal stuff, differences in how we'd structure the page is we'd probably pitch the our product first and really make that case higher up in the page, just because of what Davis said earlier about most people not scrolling to the bottom. So if you immediately got the benefits of the product up at the very top for why you should use HubSpot over Salesforce, the conversion potential could potentially be higher, and then people might not scroll all the way down to some of the information on Salesforce.
But I see them doing some of this in a very kind of sophisticated way, right? Look at this.
Yep.
HubSpot is uniquely dedicated to ease of use and simplicity for admins, reps, and managers.
Yeah, that's actually
everybody
a huge
who's
thing.
Done this knows Salesforce. It's like a programming language now. Salesforce implementation and maintenance requires expensive and well-trained administrators. They know what they're doing, which is saying, if you're a smallish business, you're not going to pick this one, you know? And they're right, right? If you're a smallish business, Salesforce is like complicated and like a really kind of a big thing. And then they put in their own quotes. And so this is done cleverly. We do this often. Shout out to Daniel Levi on our team. Like, he loves putting in some Capterra quotes or whatever into blog posts for our clients. And this is fine too. You can't really, there's no like, you know, Salesforce can't throw a fuss because they put in their own company quotes in there. But yeah, that's the key thing we do is we would compare. And I think harkening back to this guy, this one, just like I was saying, what I would do is say, here's like the factors to consider, whatever, and then here's how we fulfill them. I think something similar, not those exact words probably, something similar would probably happen here, which is like, Salesforce, HubSpot, they have XYZ, but here's what we think is really important. Or in this case, I would say, but we are built, like Salesforce built for like enterprise, blah, blah, blah. We're built for businesses from this to this that are kind of smaller. If you are smaller, like we have been in this space for 10 years, we've worked with 1,000 companies. From that experience, here's what we have learned is really important for you for a CRM. You need this. You need this to be simple. You want to be able to do this without a developer or whatever. And so we built HubSpot around that. Let's dive into the details of that. Here's how that part works. Here's how this part works. So like, again, you kind of set the narrative is how we do it. And that's genuinely useful for them, assuming you're selling like an honest, good product. All right, Travis.
Awesome. Very good. I guess one quick question is, with these kind of versus alternative pages, do you kind of look at the SERP to kind of distinguish whether how you structure the page? Because like you have these landing pages, which are popular. Then you also have like the blog posts, which you kind of talked about.
I mean, yes, we look at the SERP on everything, but on these, like the SERP is usually filled with these kind of surface level. The SERP is filled with this stuff.
Yeah.
This.
Yeah. Well, you bring up an interesting point: landing page versus blog post. We tend to do blog posts just because that's mainly what our service is, but we've also done a blog post that goes in detail just to get it to rank, and then have converted the page to then a landing page template that has all the same information that's just formatted differently to help with convert. So even for example, on this page has all the details that you would need, but it's all done in that accordion, if you go down, or just the drop downs. So if this was a blog post, these would probably be just H2s or H3s within a section, and all this information would just be there, but it's just formatted differently because here it's a landing page.
Yep. Excellent.
Phil, as Benji's saying this, you're asking any CRO best practices for these types of pages. We is that published? Did we publish this?
Yeah. Do landing page versus blog posts.
This is going to be embarrassing if we're not somewhere. Okay, oof, at least we made it above the fold.
Well, it was just published, so
someone needs to Clearscope this page. The so surprisingly, so we came in thinking, like kind of what Benji's alluding to, thinking, okay, blog posts are great in that the format of them and the amount of words you can put in there and not have it not be weird helps you rank, but they're not as good for conversion. And I believe the stats are in here. When we sat down and measured it, we found, at least for the 1 or 2 clients that are behind this one, we found a shocking like amount of blog posts converted at like multiple single-digit percentages, 2, 3, 4 plus percent, and versus landing pages for similar conversion things did not. So like in this case, industry landing pages 0.4, 0.48, 0.47. There's a bunch of details in this blog post saying why we think these are comparable. They're very, very similar keywords. And this is like 1.27, 0.4. So like the average was above 1% and this was below. Admittedly, these landing pages happen to be on keywords that had more search volume, so the traffic is higher. So we're looking at much lower traffic compared to higher traffic. And so that's going to affect things. But it wasn't, from what we've measured, it's not obvious that a landing page format is, for these keywords, is converting a lot higher than blog posts. Yeah. C plus. Okay, send this to Cam.
So moving on, next, the product landing page. So I'm going to drop it into chat for sales engagement software. And everybody else, keep putting in your posts, whatever you want Benji and Devesh to take a look at.
Well, I think just to start off, I think this even kind of ties back to that last blog post that we were just talking about, because what we often see is these kind of keywords, the sales engagement platform, almost every company wants one of their product or service pages to rank for this keyword. And if you just think about the goal of this page on your site, it almost has competing priorities with search. And so oftentimes these product pages, really, it's if someone comes to your site, they're going into platform, product, solution pages, and then this whole page is created around getting a demo or getting someone to take action, as opposed to if you're creating a page to rank for this keyword, there's probably a lot of information that's needed on this page that you're not going to want to include on your product page or the landing page. So I just want to throw that out as a high level thing, because when we look at some of these keywords, we often prefer to go after them with blog posts, just because well, I guess here you have a lot of this information down at the bottom, but you didn't include a lot of this information down at the bottom. We tend to go after these with landing pages, just because we found that they're easier to rank because they don't have that competing priority. And then tied to that, again, in that last blog post, we just showed data that you're often not sacrificing a massive conversion rate by choosing to go after this keyword with a blog post over a landing page. That said,
I mean, look at this. This is basically a blog post.
Yeah, this is a blog post. So you've already optimized. So in this case, it doesn't matter. But I just want to throw that out there for the people that don't have this much information on these pages, because what we see is that they go after these pages with very thin landing pages that don't have this additional content. And then they try to build a ton to these pages, but the intent of the page and the information on the page just doesn't ever have a chance of ranking, because it's really not matched the intent of what is wanted in the SERP.
Yeah, I mean, in this case, so some more on that. In this case, what if sales view is what? 1, 2, 3, 4. I don't know how we count these now. 4, 5. So you're midway through. We tend to see a spike in both traffic and conversions, in particular, when we see posts get to the top 3 spots. So I think, like, to summarize what Benji's saying, the consensus thinking, it seems like, in the marketing space is, if you could rank in the same spot with a landing page or blog post, you pick the landing page or product page because it's more conversion oriented. I still think that I kind of agree with that, but we have data suggesting that may not always be true. Okay, but you take that at face value. I think this, what Benji's saying is, but can you rank the same with a blog post and a landing page, right? Because if you can't, if like 5 is borderline, if you're down here with your landing page and you're like, no, guys, we're already on page 1, you know, why would we create a blog post for it? I'll tell you, like, whatever the blog post is converting at is going to get you way more conversions if it can get to top 2, top 3, way more. We've, like, how many client calls have we been on where, you know, we're like, hey, you know, we're at the bottom of page 1 or whatever, and there's barely stuff coming in. You have to be like, just hang on. And then a couple of weeks later, you know, you're moving up and you're like, there you go, there are the conversions. And that's, I don't know, a million SEO companies have published the graph or whatever, the chart of clicks on these different things. You know, 1, 2,
the
3.
reason I would say that is because, so Kenzie asked a perfect question. How are these not all listicles? That's all I ever see. And to me, I mean, it's a good question, because to me, this keyword actually indicates that there likely should be a listicle. And so just a couple of points of why I think that. G2 ranks, let's see, I guess number 1 outside of the featured snippet for this. And so, and then go down a little bit. So beyond just the product landing pages, they're the home pages of those sites who have been able to rank for sales engagement platform. You see a couple of these listicles down here. To me, if someone's searching for a sales engagement platform, and this is true for a lot of the tools keywords, the intent is usually to find a list of options. And so if that's not included in the blog post or on the page itself, it's not to say that it can't rank, because clearly here's examples, including the sales view page. That said, I think that you have a better opportunity of ranking in that number 1 spot if you were to choose the listicle format for this keyword, because that seems to be what the intent is. If someone's searching for a sales engagement platform, they want a list of all the different ones, and they want to be able to choose which one is best for them. And so I just think if it was me, I'd probably choose to create a listicle of the top sales engagement platforms to try to rank for this keyword, as opposed to just going after it with this landing page. But that's just me. There's nuance to that, and we have examples of us being able to outrank.
I think we've ranked with both that. We would rank with list posts. We've also, in certain situations where we see page 1 is full of just single companies with their product pages or whatever, we'll produce a blog post that only talks about our client's company.
If you just, can you pull up stand up Slackbot really quickly? Because I think that'll just drive home the point. When we first went after this keyword, it's actually a very similar SERP to what we're looking at. So some nuances in the challenge here is that obviously this has a brand name in it, so it's going to be extremely difficult to outrank Slack for their own keyword. That said, Geekbot is one of our clients, and the tool that they offer is literally a Slack stand-up bot. It's a stand-up bot that sits in the Slack platform. When we first went after the SERP, if we scroll down, there actually weren't any of these listicles on this page. It was stand-up bot, it was Troopers product page. It was a lot of these product pages that were ranking number 1. And so again, we just inferred from looking at the intent of the SERP, if someone's searching for a Slack stand-up bot and there's all these various options out there, we thought the thing that would give us the best chance to rank was creating a list that compared the different options, or at least listed the different options. And by doing that, we were able to rank all the different product pages that had a lot of links to them, or the home pages to these sites that had a lot of links to them, by then providing the better intent match here. And so now we sit right under Slack, who, again, it's going to be extremely hard to beat them for their own branded search, but having that next having that second slot is still super valuable and still converts really well. So just wanted to throw that out there, because if you hadn't already created this page for people that are thinking of going after these keywords, definitely something to consider when you're thinking about the structure of the page and what the angle that you should take for the blog post is.
Yeah, and you see a lot of the stuff I've been talking about, features and capabilities, screenshots. We're just walking through what the thing does, and how it does it. And this is in a space, where there's other competitors that do very similar things. And so if you're in a space where there's a lot more nuance and differentiation between the solutions, you can get into even more depth, right? If you're in more complex product spaces where you can talk a lot more about nuance. So in terms of this, I mean, we probably wouldn't do it in this way. So even if we were doing a landing page, we would probably get right into sales views features and the benefits of them. So they're starting off with like why sales engagement is because they're trying to do this balance between blog post and landing page, right? So some of the stuff they're putting up here, like you're basically here, I think you're starting almost too far back. Someone's Googling sales engagement platform. You're trying to be one of the top results here. And this whole section at the beginning is trying to convince them that sales engagement is an important thing. Well, they Googled for a sales engagement platform, so they're already kind of convinced. So maybe, oops, that was a misclick. If they, maybe if Google needs some of this, you throw that in there once, but do you need an entire section? Gartner, Sales Hacker, like all these people saying this, like they're Googling the platform, sell them on why, like where does that come? Wow, 2 sections on what is sales engagement? Why sales engagement? What is sales engagement? That's too much. Like just one of them. Then finally down here, top reasons sales leaders choose SalesView. And this format though, doesn't let you get into actually differentiating it. To get the playbook for their reps every day. Couldn't anyone in sales engagement say this? To get more out of Salesforce, it's just too general. I would get into really specifics, and that's kind of what we do when we get into the blog post. These are the problems others have. Look, we solved this. Look, this is how we're better. Look at this feature. Others don't have this.
Yeah, and this is just the point that I was making about landing pages sometimes have competing objectives with SEO, because here you're trying to get all the information into this template just so the page looks pretty, but sometimes you just need to describe more about the product or really sell in there, and it needs just more copy. And so that can be some of the challenge with just trying to format within a landing page like this. Yeah.
This is like a page where multiple different SEO teams were in charge of it, and they just kept adding stuff on, right? Like a third thing for what it is. Haven't I figured out what it is by this point? What it's not, a 4th section, a 2nd section on why you need it. Isn't there? Why you need it quickly becomes, and then there's one up here too. Why? We have an entire section on why. It's like they're just saying, okay, if we add more stuff on what sales engagement is and why you need it, maybe we'll move up a couple spots. That's like the logic here. And yet there's not more on like the details. I would instead, where is the section of like, what features make a good sales enablement platform?
Yeah.
Then that you can tie it in and be like, we happen to have those.
Also, if you go back to the SERP really quick for that, and then scroll to the bottom again, because I think this is really what shows what people are looking for. So they're looking for examples. So again, everything in the SERP tells me that people are looking for a list of options. Like you see best sales engagement platform, that indicates a list of options. Then you see actually brand names in here. So Grew sales engagement, SalesLoft, they're looking for specific vendors. And so to me, I mean, you can rework the page, but I almost think that just going after this keyword with a different type of post would give you a better chance of outranking that G2 post that probably has really strong authority, because everything in the SERP is just telling me that they're looking, that the intent is actually a list of options as opposed to a what is post or any of that kind of stuff.
I mean, even if you kept this format, which obviously I'm
Sure.
not a fan of, and you just like, I think in general, it would behoove a lot of people. This is, I don't know, Bernard, if I can say this on a Clearscope webinar, this is like poor man's Clearscope, is just put some H2s, talk about these topics. Is that fair?
Yeah, look at the questions that people ask you.
This is poor man's Clearscope, right?
And also, yeah, the suggested search too. So if you just go to the top of the query and just put the bar in there, or just the cursor in the sales engagement platform and just hit, Like
Yeah.
what are those things that come up too? And sometimes it's different than what's at the bottom as well.
Yeah, these are the kind of things we did pre Clearscope. I was going to use a report just to type this in to see, but Clearscope will also do that, right? It'll tell you on the side what are these topics, and there's almost always like some overlap because you guys are analyzing what these people are talking about, and so is this. Cool. Other questions? Ooh,
Awesome. So I know we're kind of running on time, and we have another 30 minutes we can spend reviewing some more posts. To kind of wrap up, the last content type is the miscellaneous, kind of like help desk articles. So we can run through this one, and then we have actually 2 more blog posts and alternative verse pages from the audience to kind of review too, but we can jump on this one. And this one is the keyword they're kind of optimizing for is connect Google Analytics to Google Sheets. It's a help desk article, and it's kind of ranking at the bottom of that SERP.
My initial knee-jerk reaction to these is that if you are a company whose product helps people do like what the query is, which is like this going to rank for various like terms around connecting Google Analytics and Google Sheets, you could just throw up onto the page and you're in good shape. Like, because these things often, like if your product actually does it, what you're competing with, like,
yeah, there's going to be few tools to do this exact thing.
Yeah. So like in this case, it's right. It's 2 Google things. So of course you're going to get Google Help Docs because like why wouldn't the algorithm rank that first? But you're going to compete with these people with probably very similar like how to post with some screenshots. But if you're like, our product does it, well,
I don't know. I disagree to some extent, just because I see with these kind of keywords and the integrations where there's a ton of different options. So I don't know, like a Zapier, there's probably like 500 different integrations. And what I find a lot of these companies do is they just create these templates and then just like copy information across all these different pages. And
what do you mean? What kind of templates?
Like this page would be a template. So it basically what they're doing is switching out.
Oh yeah.
So like they're bringing in certain information to make this page tie to whatever the query is.
It's like programmatic SEO. Yeah.
But I think this would be much better done if I think they'd have a much better chance of ranking instead of using a template and try to do this as quickly as possible and just copy information across all these different pages. With this query, if they just walked through how to do this with their tool, kind of like that how-to post where you gave product screenshots and you said, if you're trying to connect Google Analytics to Google Sheet, here's an example of how it can be done and show how it's done with Zapier. I think you'd have a much better chance of ranking for this and outranking all those competitors than you would with a template.
How can Zapier do that when they connect with a million things? You know what I mean?
Well, because this is so specific.
Yeah, but what I'm saying is from a resource standpoint, they'd be like, we have like thousands of connectors. Like we can't create a custom page for each. Maybe you could take the top 10 with like high search volume.
And I think that's what you do. You prioritize by what are the most used Zaps and start with those pages and then work your way down. Because I think everyone here is trying to go for scale, and scale doesn't help you if you're not necessarily ranking for those keywords. So is it more beneficial to have 500 of these pages that are ranking at, let's say, position 7 or something like this one was? Or is it more beneficial to have maybe 10 or 50 of these pages that are ranking number 1 or 2 for the most valued
and it's not either or. You can have the programmatic and then just take over the top 10 or go one at a time and be like, okay, for these, we're going to build out
focus resources.
Yeah, that's actually a great point. As I was saying that, this is showing that I'm not right in the sense that Zapier is down here and these randos with just like, well, I guess coupler, I'm not familiar, but just looking at the name, it sounds like it actually does that. And so if they have
something similar,
a more specific, look at this, a much more thorough way to do it.
And this is exactly what I was saying would outrank. Yeah, so I think, Davis, your point is correct for tools that are not as used. So like Google Sheets and Google Analytics, there's likely more competition than, let's say, I don't know, some random tool
I meant for
that's
more,
lesser
right,
known.
Exactly. That's exactly what I meant. Is I guess you have helped me clarify what I was saying, which is like, I guess what I meant is these are so rare, and there's many times these obscure connectors, I feel like from past clients, Benji, where it's like they do something that's not, I mean, these are like millions of people use this, right? They do something much more nichey, and you're like, nobody is going after this keyword, but we know it's really, really indicative of someone who would want your tool because you guys build a connector. Like, whatever you do, just hit publish now. like we need to somehow rank for it, and you probably will, because it's really an obscure keyword. That's kind of what I meant. But yeah, if it's competitive, it is no surprise that this level of depth from Coupler is outranking Zapier, which, probably 99 out of 100 people on this webinar have heard of Zapier, and one, if that, has heard of Coupler. At least
well, and it's a good example of domain rating or strength or brand name doesn't always win. And so here you have a site that I've never heard of Coupler. I'm just guessing, just having not heard of them, that their domain rating is nowhere near as strong, and yet they're outranking because the intent of the blog post better solves what the person's looking for than this landing page has likely just been copied to rank for a bunch of different queries. So I would say overall,
even if Coupler, that's not
good.
No, go for it. I was just gonna make a joke.
Well, jokes are good too. I was just gonna say, overall, this is how smaller brands can compete with bigger companies, because if you're just more specific in what you're writing and you better match the intent of the query, we see this all the time where we're going up against really big brand names. And initially, when the client's working with us, they're like, oh, I don't think we're going to be able to compete with this big company or go for this keyword. But again, if you're more specific in what you create and you go into more depth, and the larger companies are taking this approach where they're just trying to scale as quickly as possible, you can often outrank these people just by producing better content that better matches the intent. And yeah, we just published a whole blog post on our strategy for outranking companies like this. If you were that Coupler company and you identified a bunch of really valuable keywords that Zapier was already ranking for, this kind of outlines our process for how we would think about competing from a content standpoint with them.
Yeah, shameless plug for Underdog SEO. Also, apologies to Underdog SEO Agency.com, who we didn't realize.
Oh, nice. We're now outranking them.
Until which probably upsets them. Apologies. We didn't know that was your agency name. We just came up with that as a thing. My joke was going to be, even if you've heard of Coupler, I can guarantee you that infoinspired.com, who apparently their blog
has blog one,
is blog one, does not have a higher domain authority than Zapier, because it says blog one. I'm curious what their blog two is and what that's ranking for.
Fantastic. We have another blog post from the audience. I'm going to drop in. It's for user acceptance testing.
Oh.
This is a space that we're kind of familiar with.
Yeah, I saw Olivia in the participant list. I don't know if she's still there. She's right in her wheelhouse. I have some cursory level of exposure to Marker.io. I think I consulted for a company that competes with them. They're like a bug reporting tool. So like when people report bugs on websites, how it usually happens is someone slacks, guys, the checkout page has this bug, and it's like a huge pain. And everyone's like, wait, what's going on? Hey, hi, Olivia. So this is lets you do it in a like a visual way. And so you can like point and say, look, this is what's going on or whatever. So user acceptance testing, is that what this is? Or is this more bug tracking? Here's a hack to see whether user acceptance testing is what this product does. Is it mentioned anywhere here? I'm seeing more bugs, find bugs, collect stuff into bugs. I wish Olivia could speak. I believe user acceptance testing is more doing the QAing ahead of time. Oh yeah. So if you have people in your company that are QAing things before you release it, they could use marker in the QA process.
Oh, to explain where the bugs
hand
are.
it over to the developers instead of like writing it out. Bullet 1 on this page, there's that thing on that box over here. They could like do it in this way. So it is more
makes sense.
Yeah. And what are they actually rating for? Just the term user acceptance testing. So yeah, this is kind of like somewhere in the mid-funnel-ish. Olivia writes, user acceptance testing is more about whether the product does what the user expects, not about finding bugs. Oh, hey-oh. So it's not about finding bugs. So that said, Olivia, I do have a client who literally uses the term, can you just UAT it? And they mean just like do the last check for bugs. So I think they're using it casually. So if we give them, if what Olivia says is true, and it's more about whether the user, what's doing what the user wants and not about bug finding, it would be less related to Marker's product. If we take the casual use of it and say some people are just use this term loosely to mean like the QAing process or whatever, although they're saying here it's that last step, and they could use Marker, then it's related. Let's just give them the benefit of the doubt. We still would probably save a keyword like user acceptance testing for later in our normal engagement after we have checked off keywords like user acceptance testing software, etc. For example, how many times have I created a report when I meant to do a keyword search in here? User acceptance testing. And so
now I know why we run out of credits so quickly.
I know. Hey, with how much we pay for Clearscope, we don't run out of credits anymore. But I think you can quickly delete it. You're like, no, I just wanted a keyword search. So UAT meeting. There's got to be template checklist. At some point, there's got to be.
What do you think? Like platform or something? Yeah, platform. So, oh, they're UAT testing tools right there. The Teardown.
Yeah. So we would go after these first because this, like, there's some fraction of people Googling this. A large fraction are just like, what is it? How does it work? What do I do? Absolutely. You're going to get some conversions if you are a UAT tool. Again, let's just leave that argument aside. Assume Marker is. If you're a UAT tool, yeah, you'll get some conversions from it. Also, it'll be a lot harder to rank for this than down here because less people are doing this. Because the way most other companies got to hire an SEO agency. What do most SEO agencies do? They type this in, they sort by multi-search volume, and they go like top down. They're like, look, we're getting new traffic. So this is going to be more competitive, whereas this is going to be less competitive. But the conversion rate and search intent from this is extremely, extremely high because they're looking for a tool. None of these people are looking to just like get a lay of the land of what UAT is. They're literally looking for a tool. Then you see templates and all that. So we would check off of those first and then move up here. And then once you move up here, like, yeah, you can, I don't know. I mean, you would evaluate this like any other how-to post. Like, are you saying things that are interesting, original? And then are you bringing in Marker? Are they? Let's see. I don't know. Like, these are just look like diagrams. These aren't Marker screenshots. Here we go.
There we go.
How to conduct it. Okay, perfect. Yeah. So this should get, assuming you're actually ranking for this, are they? User acceptance testing. Did I already open this in tab? Marker. Yeah, they're not on here. So it's not going to get any conversions until you're, or very few.
Let's see if we scroll on. So what are the 4 types? So I mean, really, if you're not ranking for this and you were trying to go after this term and you're just wondering why, just going back to the search results here can sometimes give you clues as to maybe what's missing in your article. Or
I mean, even if you look at these results though, like this is not very product-y, it feels like
no, it's not
testinghelp.com.
But these sites actually rank for a lot of these testing keywords, as I'm sure Olivia knows very well because we've tried to outrank a lot.
Stanford.edu is on here, meaning like the people are Googling this to just like get their bearings on what this space is. So just to emphasize my point here that like this is going to be very different here. Did you guys know that you don't have to copy and paste? You can just click this G. Thank you. to the product designer at the Clearscope for saving me some time. So user acceptance, testing tools of the trade, tools, user snap, userback.io, Quora question, what is the best UAT software? So like if you build UAT software, if you're spending your time and resources trying to rank for this, where people are wanting stanford.edu documents apparently, and software testing help.com's thing, like my thing is you sure as hell should have already ranked for this, because otherwise why not? Like the product intent is really high. And in fact, in one of our most well-known blog posts, apparently so well-known, oh, it's in a tab in another window, my bad, pain point SEO, that we show like the difference in, oh, Benji, you're gonna really get mad. Someone else has a feature snippet for pain point SEO. Here, like you can get ridiculously higher conversion rates. This thing has 10,000 users in the time frame where this guy has 1,000 users, and yet we've generated more signups for this client with it. Why? Because conversion rates can increase by greater than 10. Like that's amazing. And this is already a high converting blog post compared to the rest of this non-related top of the funnel stuff. 3, 0, 8, 41. You're like, great. Well, if you go, sometimes if you get really, and this was the versus type stuff that we already talked about. So that's why I think you can get really high conversion rates. That's why like I'd go after these first.
Really quickly, going back to this one, two things that I noticed just by looking at the SERP again that I don't know if they're in the blog post that I think adding them might help. Again, if we scroll all the way down to the bottom, yeah, the number one related search to this is a template, and there's actually two queries in there relating to a template. One's looking for a template with Excel, and one is looking for just a normal template. And from just looking at the SERP here, it doesn't look like a lot of the competitors have that included. So again, that might be a section that you want to create in the blog post to help you rank for this keyword. The other thing that pops out to me too is just the best practices. And so if you don't have the best practices as a section in there, I would try adding those two sections and just see if that then helps you rank for this keyword. And so this is what we do often is if we're going after a keyword and for whatever reason we're not ranking for it, just go reanalyze the SERP, and there can be a couple of things. One, you created a blog post that doesn't have the right angle. So that was kind of where we analyzed the SERP before and said, oh, it looks like a majority of the blog posts that are ranking are actually listicles as opposed to like a best practices piece or how to. Maybe we should recreate this piece as a listicle, or vice versa. Then the second thing would then be to go look at some of those top blog posts and analyze what are the sections in there that are ranking, and are there any similarities between the top ranking posts. And then the other thing that you can do is then go look at the questions that people ask and then these related searches. And if you see patterns here, so like I see two things that indicate someone's looking for a template related to this keyword, that might be a section that you want to go add into your article to help better your chances of ranking for this.
Yeah, can you guys tell how Benji does SERP analysis? AKA look at this and add stuff from here into your post. It works. It's worked for us. Nathan, I see you already have UAT tools in your pipeline. Awesome. Poor man.
Fantastic.
Hashtag poor man's Clearscope.
I think we have time for one more, and it's
Cool.
actually it's one of our recent posts we published maybe a little over a week ago. So I'm going to drop it into chat. It's a Clearscope post.
Oh wow! We're
So
going to be
then-
analyzing a Clearscope
Hold back.
post.
Does that mean we're analyzing your work?
Yes.
Oh wow!
Our work.
Okay. Whew. Now I'm getting a little nervous. How to create an SEO content outline and brief. Well, so those of you that, if you don't know, now you know. The SEO content outline, obviously you guys do that. And correct me if I'm wrong, this is a new-ish feature.
Sure.
Now it's really going to mess me up when
Published a little over a week ago.
was actually a blog post. SEO, don't you guys, where do you do a content outline? In here somewhere? I probably should not click in the client stuff. Anyway, so first things first, you guys have a product that can literally help them do this. Should I Google this, or is this going to be, oh, you guys just published it? Oh, look, already at number 3. So if we look at this, how do I create, how do I create is great. You can use your tool to literally do that. what to
Yeah, what
include.
I would expect with this piece without even reading it or looking in any further, just from analyzing the SERP, is that the piece walks through a process to help someone create an outline. And my guess is that with this piece, it should tie to how you can do this with Clearscope and create an outline for whatever query you're going after.
Yeah. I mean, yeah. So yeah, like I would say good SEO content outlines need, so let's just close this and let's see. Let's do this in a fun way, Travis. Good SEO content outlines need XYZ. People often make mistakes and include this other stuff. And surprise, we built a tool that helps you include the things that are important. So let's see, in-house, one SEO. Oh, there's a webinar. This will help your engagement time, right? What is it? What are the goals? What are the benefits? Target audience. Okay, so it's not necessarily the way we wrote it, but it still has essential points into it. Target audience, competition. This is definitely extremely thorough. Key elements. Okay, here we go. All right. Key elements, word count, internal links. We already got the product screenshot in there. Loving it. Primary and secondary. Yeah, I haven't read the actual, I mean, obviously I'm just scrolling through, Travis. I'm not reading the actual like text slowly, but
we probably would have gotten rid of the important aspects to consider section, right? And just come straight into the key elements and then
at the very least
the step by section.
Yeah, much shorter, maybe, if not gotten rid of. Because you have kind of two basic sections. You can tell from all of our other answers that we have a bias towards like get to the meat of it as fast as possible. That said, you're ranking number 3, right? So proof's in the pudding, but yeah, like I would say like, can you not say what the goals are when you're defining what it is or benefits? So I just let it kind of combine this, like SEO content outlines are this, they're used for X. Like used for X, and they have this benefit. They allow you to make sure your writers cover XYZ thing when you're writing content. And I think this is aligned with key elements. You could argue that this is just another way of saying that, like make sure, because you could also position this as like mistakes that people make when doing it, right? They maybe don't consider this or what have you. And then key elements, word count. That's interesting. Outside of how to write a post like this, just on the substance of it, I wouldn't have put word count first. That side note, do you guys find that that's really important? We don't even check word count. As long as we get an A, and then we do the rest of what we said, we just publish. So that's interesting.
Or if we get a C+.
Yeah, or apparently C+. Stop. Internal links, external links, primary and secondary keywords. That's interesting. Just from what I know of Clearscope, and obviously this is a little bit embarrassing because I'm talking to people from Clearscope, but I thought the way I would, from everything I know of your tool, is I would say, look, the important part of a content brief is making sure it's topical, like you're covering the topics that the SERP asks for. And so how do you do that? Like, yes, you can just go in and analyze a SERP, and that's good. You can do poor man's Clearscope, shout out Benji, like, you know, like you can do all of this. And then I would say, but, you know, and then I would start introducing the things that make Clearscope seem like you can't pass it up. So you say like, but that only gives you this much, it's limited. Like, how do you know if, like, what if there are certain patterns and all of the ones in the top 10 are mentioning this? What if you're instead going to focus on this other thing and Google doesn't seem to be prioritizing it? Like, how would you know that? How would you know that at scale, doing it over and over again? We built a tool to help you do that. Yeah,
Bernard, if this is correct, again, I haven't used this feature as much, but it's essentially to guesswork out of doing an outline. So if you were to create a blog post that's trying to rank for SEO, and you're trying to do the poor man's way, like we were doing, you're trying to analyze the SERP and all that kind of stuff. And it's basically a game of guesswork. And the benefit of this feature, or this tool, is that it takes a lot of the guesswork out, and it helps you formulate the outline with the entities and sections that need to be included in your piece in order for it to rank. And so that's what I would lead with as the benefit for this section, and like really making the point of why you should use Clearscope over any other tool, or doing it without a tool, is that this tool should help you rank, and it takes all the guesswork out. And then here's like how we do it, and here's how you can create an outline your own. I think that would be like the pitch that we would really share lead with in here.
You know what I just realized or think might be happening? I think this is going to get real meta. What if they included this because this is what the Clearscope SEO content
outline says
to do for SEO content outline? So then that's actually an interesting discussion point. We're talking about basically, I think, Benji, if we're on the same page, we're both coming at this, and our comments are about
the
selling Clearscope, which is essentially a conversion argument.
Sure.
And whereas, if this is in the Clearscope report, this is largely, and I did use a report on the webinar. I feel like that's worth it. Is that this is from a ranking standpoint? You didn't.
I reimburse you.
We don't run out of reports anymore. But I appreciate the token of goodwill. So there is a push-pull there. Like, okay, we need to include this stuff. And I'll be honest, there have been times we have written a post, and I do it this way, and I think most of our team does it this way. We Clearscope at the end. I know this is not a good sales pitch for the content outline thing, but we happen to Clearscope at the end because you can see how passionate we are for our own like logical SERP analysis step. But we Clearscope at the end. There are times where the Clearscope report is like, here are all of these things that you did not include. And we're like, oh man, how are we going to even include that? And sometimes they include basic things that we feel are maybe under the knowledge level of our target audience. And we're like, well, we don't want to talk about XYZ thing. Like, we wanted to come at it at an angle that really sells our clients' tool. Like, often our clients have cool tools that are like, everyone else in the industry is doing this wrong. We built a tool to do it properly. So then the Clearscope report says, like, include all these terms about the doing it wrong camp. And they're like, well, no, like, we wanted to talk about our tool. And usually, at least one trick I do is I create a paragraph where I'm like, most people usually waste their time talking about this,
doing this, and that.
Clearscope terms right in that paragraph. And that's like honest, right? What does Olivia say? Her favorite way to cover those terms is to say, before we get started, let's clarify what we're not talking about.
That's a good one.
That is brilliant. Yeah, it's like similar. And so that allows us, I think if you can stay in the top 3 or move into 2 and 1, I would consider a test where maybe you then rejigger this page to have it more like be focused on Clearscope differentiation, how Clearscope is better differentiated. Watch the conversions per month or whatever. These are kind of slow tests, let's be honest, right? These aren't things I'm not going to provide like 5 customers a day. And conversions per month, and see if you can keep that ranking. In fact, even if you don't watch the stats, if you can keep your ranking and you just logically are looking at the post and you're like, yep, this new version sells our tool a lot more, why wouldn't you keep that? Something to think about. Definitely. Because you guys have the benefit of like, you have brand recognition and the product and the brand is, and people are talking about using it for things like SEO content outlines. So like, you have that going for you. And then, and there's a good chance therefore that you could be a little bit more loosey-goosey and more aggressive on selling your tool, and do some of like Olivia and I's tricks of like throwing in the keywords where you need in a brief area and get away with it from a ranking.
Also, one minor stylistic thing, if we just go up to the very top, we would probably start the blog post where it says for many in-house marketing teams and just remove all the stats. It's just like a personal preference from me that like if you're Clearscope and you're the authority on SEO, or you're trying to portray yourself and then you're using a third-party stat to prove your point, it kind of takes away from that authoritativeness. Instead of just saying, like,
in our
getting into it right away.
Yeah. The other thing is, I think even outside of linking to a third party, even if this was an internal link, Benji, this is a great point that I totally didn't even see.
Yeah,
it's just too far back in the logic train, in our opinion. because someone knows enough about SEO to be Googling and wanting an SEO count outline. You don't need to tell them that SEO is valuable, right? Like, first of all, it's SEO, right? So like, you know, it's not 1995, it's 2022. So like everyone knows, anyone in this space knows SEO is valuable. Then second, they're not Googling like digital marketing channels or something that's general and you need to sell them on SEO. And they're not even Googling basic SEO things. This is kind of a specific-ish search term. So I would just be like that. No one needs to be like, well, I don't know. I want an SEO count outline, but first of all, what's the ROI that average companies get on SEO? Like, right? Apologies, Travis. This is
No, this is super helpful. Definitely appreciate this.
Yeah, it's good. It's good.
Yeah, Devesh can rip pieces apart, so just watch out.
No, that's what we want to see and hear.
The best way to grow. Awesome. Well, I think we're right at time.
Yep.
So big
Any
thanks
last questions from anyone? Just rapid fire, 3
Yeah,
minutes.
rapid fire.
Yeah, I have a question actually about video. So I'm seeing more of a prevalence of video content just being more valued by Google. You kind of see them show up in video carousels. So my question is, how do y'all think about video? And do you need to be creating your own video, or is snagging, you know, an embed on YouTube of something that makes your point just as good or worse?
I mean, I can speak to in our own site, on our own site, we just try to reference video if we have something that directly relates to the post. We're not creating unique video content for each blog post. That's not to say you shouldn't. It's just, again, a function of resources and priorities that we just think focus on the ranking first, and you can add other elements. Or if you add another video to the post down the road, I'm sure it has a better chances of ranking for that keyword in both video and written search. David, you could probably speak more to like some of the stuff we're doing, just adding like demo videos and things into client content.
Yeah, we did that for, we've been doing that for tap clicks, which is what I said is kind of the data box realm. I don't have a controlled experiment though, where I'm like, yeah, we took this and added video and XYZ thing happened. My reason for adding video was actually more of what we talked about dissecting this. It was a conversion thing, is that tap clicks in this space is kind of like a hard to wrap your mind around, boring B2B space where you're like talking about connectors into a database and dashboards of stuff. And I felt like the words were, it was just so hard to convey this stuff. And then I discovered, wait a minute, they have all these demo videos. And from a conversion perspective, I wanted to be like, okay, we're talking about all these connectors from the blah, blah, blah to the blah, blah, blah. Here's a video, you know, and like that could get you to the next step. You may know more because you pay attention to kind of trends on SERPs, Bernard, of like how many of these are doing what this one, the Google Analytics one, where like there's videos in here. I'll say that like so far, you know, the vast majority of our clients, we don't produce videos for our clients. We don't do that in our services. Majority of clients don't have a bunch of good videos. Most of our work, therefore, is written text, still working so far. But when we do see these, I feel like there are occasions that I've seen where we may link to some videos related to that, that are just someone's YouTube video, you know, because we know that Google seems to want videos to break down how to do something.
Yeah, I'm seeing it very specifically if we're talking about it from a B2B context in how to and review. So those types of queries, you could imagine if you have a video embed, chances are it could be a much better job, helping the user review, like watch somebody like use a few different softwares or, you know, do something. And I am like thinking about it more from a conversion perspective as well. So that makes me believe that just using a video embed is just as good, even if you don't create it, right? Because somebody clicks onto your page, they watch the video and they're like, great, that did a great job, you know, helping me. It didn't have to be your video, but they're not right going back to Google and performing some sort of additional like action. And so that's kind of what I'm seeing, which is why, you know, I'm interested to collect more like hard data on, you know, whether you need your own video or just embeds of other people's videos is fine.
Yeah. Cool. This was really fun.
I
Yeah,
agree.
Yeah, had a blast. Definitely appreciate it. Big thank you to both of y'all. Is there anything you wanted to share before we give everybody else their day back?
No, if yeah, I'll do a shameless plug. If anybody here is, writes content in this way, thinks about content in this way, and wants to work with a team that also does, I would love it if you checked out our jobs page and considered applying. And you can either email me, davish@growandconvert.com, DEVESH, or apply and email me. Yeah, thanks. Bernard just dropped it in. Because this is the way we did this is how we think through blog posts and how we write blog posts. And if you do that, you think you do it well, and you want to do more of it and learn, we'd love to sort of have you consider joining our team.
Fantastic. Awesome. Well, thanks again. Everybody else have a great rest of your day.
Now, before we wrap this up, don't forget to share, like, and subscribe so you don't miss out on more great content from the industry's best SEOs, content marketers, and content strategists. The Clearscope webinar series happens every week and helps SEO content creators of all skill levels advance their knowledge. Hope to see you. Tune in next time.